So I've been asked to speak very briefly about fintech and the environment, and how we can really start thinking of how fintech can really help us to deliver on environmental goals. I'll try to be very brief. All the other speakers have really made very valuable points, and I'll try to leverage on that. In terms of background, I think it's no gainsaying that we are in a very difficult position now with regards to the environment, and we're likely in a state of emergency. When you kind of put on your TV or on your to the social media, it's all about flooding now, and that is just one aspect of the effects of the changes in the climate condition as it's impacting on a developing country like Nigeria. For me, with regards to the environment, I think it's very important for fintech and the financial sector at large to really be to rise to the occasion and the challenge in terms of designing appropriate and contextualize product and services that would enable Nigerians to be able to adapt and also to mitigate the climate change effect. We've seen a lot of displacement going on with the recent flooding. We've seen lots of lives. We've seen livelihoods and properties being destroyed. And apart from this, we see a key sector to the economy being really significantly affected, from agriculture all the way to economic and trade. But the question now is, how do we mitigate? How do we leverage on the financial sector at large and fintech specifically? What are the roles of fintech, whether they are startup, whether they are incumbent, whether they're technology company, how can they come in to support us in this at this crucial time to develop a newer approach, new tools and instruments that will enable us to adapt better to this changing climatic effect. This is a kind of part of the reality. This is a common sight when you turn on your TV and you see the devastating effect of flooding over the last few months, which has been occasioned by kind of high, above average rainfall, which has been compounded again by Nigeria as a country and other countries around us, Cameroon, Chad, trying to manage the amount of water in their dams, and releasing this water, which are flooding the farmland communities and also displacing people. And those are some of the statistics that are quite significant in terms of the reported deaths, the number of states actually impacted, and as well as the number of people that have been displaced and the ripple effect of that on the humanitarian crisis. Now, in terms of addressing all this, I mean, there's a new nexus, which is the interface between finance, climate, and digital technology. And as we approach COP27, one of the key reflections from the last COP is how can we interface between finance, tech, and climate to help support the development of new ways of addressing ESG risk and vulnerability. There are key environmental issues around flooding, as we mentioned earlier, drought, land use, soil degradation. The list is so endless. And the impact of financial sector as a whole, or fintech in specific terms, stepping in to help to address some of these will be significantly felt around livelihood, around generating of income and new jobs, around even getting some data that will enable us to start measuring and to start reporting and disclosing some of these vulnerability and risk so that we can better prepare and better manage the outcome of this risk as they occur. So how can fintech step in? It's very important for fintech and financial services generally to design products that are contextualized in nature and address specific demographic, also having a gender perspective to it as well, and also supporting the building of data and evidence on climate vulnerability that will support financial institutions and the wider ecosystem to deliver appropriate innovative products. So product need to be tailored the product needs to be able to address not just today's challenges, but challenges that are also emerging that might be impactful in the future. In addition to that, it's very important for financial institutions to start thinking of the need for a shift in their financial asset and portfolio towards a more sort of climate-related assets classes, including renewable energy, climate, as well as climate-smart agriculture. I'll quickly move to the next in terms of recommendation. I think it's important, as I said earlier, to contextualize innovative products and services. And this is important within the context of Nigeria for us to look at critical sectors like agriculture that fit into a livelihood. Someone earlier mentioned financial inclusion is very, very critical. What are the infrastructure that we need to build, and where can fintech really play a valuable role within this as we try to shift away from the use of fossil fuel towards more renewable energy? What is the role of fintech within this? What are the opportunities that fintech have to really plug into that space? It could be in terms of paygo model or any other innovative model that will allow those that are aiming to shift away from the use of fossil fuel to be able to afford and access those new ways of living. So as I mentioned earlier, affordability is very critical. Access is very critical because even though this innovative product might be there, we've heard a lot about around solar home system, solar irrigation. If individuals cannot access and cannot afford, it's going to be very difficult, for there to be sustainability in terms of the usage of this innovative product. So affordability is important, access is important, and the PSB are also playing a very critical role, just like was mentioned earlier, in getting this access across to the end user in the rural area. So designing early warning signs very critical for farmers and within the agricultural space, and also design of innovative insurance product that will help to mitigate some of the environmental related losses that might be suffered by farmers, for example, in this case. Other areas that, quickly speaking, that we might want to start looking at in terms of designing our products and services is how we can leverage on fintech to help to incentivize or drive citizens in terms of their participation in environmental management. How can we pass ownership over to citizens and change their behavioral mode in such a way that they see the environment as part of their responsibility? Catering for the environment today in terms of the use of plastic, in terms of the way they recycle, and if fintech can step into that space to be able to design products that might, for example, allow users to really rack up points that could be used to trade for other essential commodities across local financial system, might be a good incentive for people to start engaging in terms of environmental management. Regulators play a very, very critical role. We've been engaging on the part of the UK government with the central bank, with the Security and Exchange Commission, with NICOM, with PENCOM, in creating an enabling and friendly environment for fintechs to ensure that they can thrive, they can co-create, they can test their ideas in a very safe space. For example, the use of sandboxes are very popular, and we're trying to drive that within our engagement with the regulators. Now, we also need to institutionalize the whole idea of a green fintech challenge that will bring together both the private sector as well as the public sector counterpart for everyone to co-create and partner within that space to be able to deliver on the environmental goal. I've also included a bit of the UK's approach and some of the lessons that we can learn from the UK. In 2018, the UK, through the Financial Conduct Authority, launched the pilots for the Green FinTech Challenge to support innovation and growth within that green space. I've included a link here for anyone that might be interested in that particular challenge. The whole idea of the challenge is to bring together startup, incumbent, as well as technology providers using instruments such as regulatory sandboxes, direct support, advisory, as well as bespoke green finance cohort engagement to be able to drive this new and emerging idea about the use of green fintech to really drive environmental impact. Lastly, I've included a bit of example in terms of use cases for anyone that might be interested in this. But at the end of it, it is very important for everyone to come together in terms of how we can really build the ecosystem in such a way that we create more awareness, create more trust, create more leverage for fintech to be able to drive the changes that we want to see within the environmental space. I'll stop here now. Thank you.